What's up, everybody? Geo here with another Post the Quest video, and I thought tonight we might do something a little different. I wanted to show you guys my GamePro collection from back in the day. Some of these magazines are the original magazines that I received in the mail. Some I purchased later on in life to replace the ones that I had thrown away or destroyed. But many of you may have been subscribed to GamePro. Some of you may have not. Maybe you subscribe to other magazines. I also have, I had an EGM subscription, and I also had a Sony PlayStation magazine subscription. I had a Sega magazine subscription and the Dreamcast Sega magazine subscription. But those, I've yet to find them again. I ended up throwing those out, unfortunately, with things that happen in life and moving and such, and things got misplaced. But this is the October 1993 version of the GamePro magazine. We still had the Sega Genesis, which was rocking hard, the SNES, which was in there fighting. SNES and NES as well were also still viable consoles. The Turbo Duo, which was a kind of obscure console if you were in the US, but very popular in Japan. CDs are a thing, I guess. They added that in there. The Neo Geo, which is another one of those obscure consoles in the US, at least due to price point. Game Boy, Game Gear, and the Lynx. The Lynx itself also very rare. I remember only seeing one kid in 5th grade with a Lynx, and he had Batman for the Lynx, but that's about it. That's all I remember about it. But yeah, this is introducing Super Street Fighter 2 for the arcade. This was hot at the arcade, starring 4 new characters. We had Cammy, DJ, Fei Long, and T-Hawk introduced to us as the 4 new World Warriors in Super Street Fighter 2 for the arcade. Street Fighter was a rabid IP for Capcom. This took people by storm. Back in the day, Street Fighter was the equivalent to what Call of Duty used to be. And now with the resurgence of fighting games, I feel like Tekken is taking its lead, and other fighting games have overshadowed Street Fighter. Street Fighter is still very much alive. There is a community for it. No, don't get me wrong. But this was king in gaming back in the day. Let's go ahead and open this up. First page, we get a blast of nostalgia. An advertisement for the SNES Advantage, because losing sucks. And Sega, not to be outdone, had its 2-page spread for its peripherals from the same company, ASIC. So we have the arcade stick and the ASIC pad, which was for fighting games as well, but gave you a little bit more grip and some more buttons and toggles here for turbo and whatever. It's the biggest thing to hit gaming. How many of you remember receiving GamePro magazine in the mail and remember that day just instantly teleporting yourself into gaming, forgetting about schoolwork? Boy, that was me. I would come home and see my mailman come by, and I would see that familiar package and just tear into it. I would try to save it for the whole month and read a couple pages at a time, but that never happened. I just couldn't help myself. I had to see everything. Socks the Cat, still pretty much into the Bill Clinton era. Call it capital punishment. but Socks the cat, the nation's first feline, is at play on Capitol Hill. And here we see more of the Street Fighter artwork that was used in the cover. Page 44 is going to go into Super Street Fighter 2. Table of contents continues with more posters. We have some game advertisements and GamePros. The GamePros themselves, the editors of the magazine, they would write specific articles, really just letting people know. This is when they've officially renovated their rating system, and they talk about how, like, over the years in the game industry has really grown up, and the quality of the games is getting better. Oh, how much more right were they when it comes to the stuff that's going on now, the games that we're seeing? How much more grown up are they since then? GamePro has grown up too. A few years ago, our articles were called the Pro Reviews. Didn't include ratings or much. This is the first edition of that renovated rating system, the ones that we're very familiar with the faces, the hot, the or not face. I would always look for these symbols on each of the categories because that meant that was a good buy, and I surely wasn't going to spend my money on something I didn't enjoy. But usually, 9 times out of 10, they were pretty much in line with my tastes. And oh my God, and wow, WWF Royal Rumble now on the Genesis. The Genesis version included Hulk Hogan, which I remember just sweating that version. I really wanted it because of that. But the other versions didn't include him, which was a little bit of a letdown. So the exclusive to the Genesis, Hulk Hogan. Look at that spread. What an amazing advertisement. It just looks awesome. Too bad the games weren't that great in hindsight when you look at them now. But man, what a sight to see. This is amazing. This really brings me back. Brings me back to a time when Yokozuna was the world heavyweight champion. Bret the Hitman Hart vying for that championship. And Hulk Hogan coming in and taking it. But it was an amazing time. Now we have an advertisement for Yoshi's Cookie, which is a puzzle game I never really got into. I didn't really like those puzzle games. But the male section of GamePro is where GamePro shined. This is where video game violence, is there too much violence? For the home ports of Mortal Kombat. And the moral issues that were brought up here. The battles that were waged on these pages are iconic. And some of the responses from the editors, such as like Scary Larry, Slow Mo, they all had differences in the way that they wrote, and in the way that they interacted with subscribers, which I thought was pretty neat. So each of them have had their own persona. But now we got the pictures where fans would submit their fan art, and I thought some of these were really cool. Here they're going over some of the GamePro rating system, the new revamped, brand new rating system. That was cool. This Tweet Fighter 2. You see that? Let me get close. And then VR. Victor Max with its ginormous VR headset. I remember seeing screenshots of the games and just being blown away and really just wishing that one day this would become a reality. And lo and behold, it only took 30 years. But we got there. Now, there were virtual reality games back then, but they were just very expensive. Too expensive for the normal, everyday person to afford. Atari's Jaguar is being showcased here. 64-bit bang for $200. Now, $200 back in the day was a lot of money. And I bet you can do the math about how much it would be costing now due to inflation, but I'll leave that to you guys. Let me go closer so you guys can see this. And the weird controller. And they're already talking about a expansion port. So better than CD quality audio is what Jaguar was claiming, or Atari for the Jaguar. Cartridges that were 64-bit based. And here it is. Interactive multimedia system. So right off the bat, Jaguar was showcasing its CD add-on for its console. So this thing was going to not only have the ability to play the carts, but it'll have the ability to play CD games. Now, there was a rumor that they were allowing Sega CD games to be played, but that was just a rumor, because some parts of this article here referred to the Sega CD, and some of my friends thought maybe this would happen. So among my friends, there was a real big discussion as to whether or not, this thing was going to be able to play Sega CD games. And here we have the showcase of Atari Jaguar's software lineup for its launch. Not sure if this Crescent Galaxy game came out or not, but it reminds me a lot about a particular game called Star Fox. And this probably was going to be headed as the Jaguar's killer app. I'm not sure if this one ever was released. I don't recall. Alien vs. Predator was, but it didn't look as good as the screenshots in this magazine. They talked about Cybermorph, which we know AVGN played Cybermorph and had fun with that one. Kasumi Ninja. Raiden, I don't think Raiden ever came out for the Jaguar, actually. Evolution Dino Dudes. Tempest 2000, which turned out to be the best-selling and most sought-after Jaguar game. Maybe best-selling might be a stretch, but Club Drive, I don't think that one ever came out either. Tiny Toon Adventures, I don't recall that ever being part of the Jaguar's lineup. And then CD games that were on the way: Dracula on CD, Space Pirates. I don't recall. Another big advertisement from EA Sports. Who owned a Genesis, and only a Genesis, owned it because of the sports games. Even if they didn't necessarily play the other video games that were offered, or they weren't into video games, they would purchase the Genesis for Madden, NHL, FIFA, MLB. So Genesis was a big, I hate to say, dude bro console. And here we have Hot at the Arcades. Hot at the Arcades was GamePro's arcade review and arcade move list section, where the pros would talk about the moves, different button combinations that you can use, winning tactics, and then showcase some of the arcade games that were new and entice people to go and drop their quarters in them. But this is for Saturday Night Slam Masters. And this is sort of like a review / preview. And they would show you pretty much, you'd look at these screenshots and be like, wow, this is something I would like to play at home. But we just never got the ability to do so. As you can see, you have the different characters here. Two characters that were being showcased. Biff Slamkovich and the Scorpion. Scorpion, though, was my favorite character. You can see some of the screenshots. These screenshots were the next best thing to actually playing the game back in the day. Believe it or not. This was what hopes hung upon. If you were that kind of kid who didn't have a system but had the game magazines, I actually knew one. I used to be one. There was a time when I didn't own any game systems. It was a bad time. And all I had was a magazine subscription. And I would get the magazines and look at the screenshots and envision playing the game. And that really held me over. It was a wild time. And now we have another advertisement for Genesis. Now Genesis players can kick some real. Fill in the blanks with your words of choice. Street Fighter Championship Edition on the Sega Genesis. I love this ad. It's so cool. Like the colors pop. It's like they really put a lot of effort into these advertisements. It's not like today. And then we start with the Role Player's Realm. They'd showcase some Super NES games. They had some reviews sometimes. Sometimes they would have previews or pro previews. But this is the 17th Saga. for the Super Nintendo. And this awesome centerpiece here. Whoever put the magazine together really thought it out. Different character arts all around. Screenshots, of course. These are the things that got us. This is what we came here for. This is why we subscribe to the magazine. And then, of course, they have their review of the magazine down here, or of the game, I should say, down here. But if I were to review the magazine, I'd give it 5.5 all the way. Move on. Shining Force for the Genesis. This is a review of Shining Force, which had, at the time, just been released. And the pros really didn't like this one. The sound category was really low. It scored at 2.5 out of 5. And the game retailed for $64.95. A lot of people say that games have gone up in price, but sometimes I question that. Having lived in this era, there were some pricey games. And as you can see, games that didn't review well either. Final Fantasy Legend 3 for the Game Boy. This one reviewed a little better compared to the Genesis Shining Force, which is, you can see, it's rather weird. Sometimes they had a little bias for series like Street Fighter, Final Fantasy, but in graphics, this one pretty much got a better score, which is kind of telling, but I'll let you be the judge. We have Defenders of Oasis. Big year for RPGs. This one for the Game Gear. This one also reviewed pretty well. Another one of these inserts. Get 12 issues of GamePro, only $19.99. That actually was a good deal, believe it or not. You got 12 issues spread across a year. I would sometimes double up and get 2 years. Bill me, payment enclosed. Annual rate stand was $59, so you got a pretty good discount. It's a $30 discount there. Commit too soon and you'll wind up getting burned, said John Madden. Dennis the Menace. I don't know about this game. I've never played it, but really nice advertisement here. It never appealed to me. Another one of those side scrollers. Kind of looks like Ghouls and Ghosts in a way. But I'm not sure if it played the same. And here we have the Panasonic 3DO special feature. Electronic entertainment goes ballistic. Battle chess for the 3DO. Crystal Dynamics with Crash and Burn. IntelliPlay Football. Showcasing the new 3DO. If I did miss a page. Mad Dog McCreed, which was another arcade game ported. And with these screenshots, you can tell how good it looked on the 3DO and almost arcade perfect. Of course, we did get a PS3 version, which brought it into HD, and I'm so very glad that we got that one. Works really good with the PlayStation Move controllers. And some Oceans Below game that really didn't provide too much of a screenshot. These were the games that were being worked on for the 3DO. Out of this world. Remember, we ended up getting an SNES port. And that was fire. San Diego Zoo, I mean, who really cares about learning, right? No one really cared about that. I don't think that game ever came out either. Total Eclipse. And some weird Star Trek game that I don't think ever came out. And then we have an advertisement here for Super Street Fighter, or this is not Super, excuse me, this is Street Fighter Turbo 2. This game I remember seeing on a Blockbuster shelf, unannounced. I just came in looking for a new game to rent and saw this on the shelf. I had to rent it, even though I had the original Street Fighter 2. And here's a big advertisement for Bart Simpson's it's the Simpsons, Bart Simpson's Nightmare. Your worst nightmare just hit town in the Genesis, or on the Genesis. And here it is, the cover feature, Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2, the new challengers. As promised, page 44 talks about this hot at the arcades game. New faces, new screens, all the new character portraits. So even the classic characters received new character portraits, and they talk about that in detail. They talk about the balancing and how it feels so much better than Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and how this should have been Street Fighter 3. Got a good look at Cammy and DJ. Showcasing their different special moves. Cammy's spiral arrow propels her across the screen as her entire body twirls. Very descriptive. Although they didn't show the button combos, but they did show the pictures and other moves. He shakes his fist. He rattles your skull. DJ's got some punching power that'll have Honda seeing stars or birds or Grim Reapers. And then some of the older characters had new moves as well that were incorporated in this game. They show Fei Long on the next page. And of course you have your classics. Get a good look at that. And now a big 2-page Genesis preview of Aladdin, the mega hit video game. remember not being that interested in it, besides my friends talking about it all the time. So I didn't really think much of it. But sales numbers say otherwise. Now, I also liked how they used to do this. They used to show the entire level without any screen cuts. So just all the way through. And I think the way they did it was that they would stop the character in the middle of the screen, take a screenshot, move them forward, take a screenshot, and then just do like a little panoramic of the whole scene. It was pretty cool. And you got to see the level layout completely as is. Final Fight 2. I was about to say Street Fighter because they are within the same universe technically. This world tour isn't exactly a vacation. Kind of taking a jab at itself there. And the preview for the SNES Empire Strikes Back. I remember playing Star Wars for the Super Nintendo and just loving that game. But I never played Super Empire Strikes Back, nor did I play Super Return of the Jedi. I'll show you all the little previews of the levels. And this I thought was pretty cool, the Imperial Doggies. Rope them, Imperial Doggies. Sega CD preview of Rebel Assault. I actually played this game to death. Now, if you screw up, at least you got teammates to blame. 4-way play from EA. What a great way to showcase 4-way couch competitive play. You could blame your teammates, and a lot of that happened, really. The Game Gear got its version of Star Wars, and the pros reviewed it. Here we have an ad for Clay Fighter for the Super Nintendo. Interplay's fighting claymation game. Or claymation fighting game. Laugh your ice off. Go head to head. You can mail in and receive a Clay Fighter temporary tattoo. Mail this in. Genesis Pro review right here for Aero Acrobat. And again, the screenshots were what sold us on the games. They were placed strategically too. A lot of the times, we didn't spend too much time messing with any of the actual score and what it looked like. We just wanted to see what the game actually looked like and how we may have envisioned it playing, and sometimes we were dead on comparing it to other games. And the visuals were important back then as well. Not a lot of games looked good, but we had nothing to compare it to as well. Nothing greater. I always thought this game was interesting. This Haunting, starring Polter Guy. You had to haunt people as a ghost. I thought that was pretty cool. RBI 93, another baseball game. Me and my friends played endlessly. Dashin' Desperados for the Genesis. Tengen with its counterfeit Genesis games. Get a Grip. Well, they were real Genesis games, but they were unlicensed. Genesis Pro review of Dinosaurs for Hire. Tom Mason's Dinosaurs for Hire. Never played this game. Another Tengen soccer game, World Cup. They were quality games, don't get me wrong. Genesis review of Gauntlet. This would be Gauntlet 4. And here we have RoboCop 3. RoboCop 3. Half man, half machine, all action. RoboCop. First time on Genesis and Game Gear. Bob for the Genesis. And this is a turbo pad that I actually owned. This is the advertisement for it. Battle tested in combat with Sub-Zero. I always thought that Sub-Zero looked really, really cool. Showcasing the Mortal Kombat Genesis version. That particular pad that he's holding is the Genesis version of that pad. Now, it didn't have a D-pad per se. It just had kind of like a little, kind of like a touchpad almost, that mocked or mimicked, I should say, what the D-pad was, but I think it was really, really bad. I don't remember getting a lot of joy out of that controller. Actually, I remember getting rid of it. And Genesis Pro review of Street Fighter, or Pro preview, I should say, of Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition for the Genesis. Incidentally, this came right after the advertisement for the arcade pad, the turbo pad. Screamers, which was a mail order video game store, and you can there's other pages in some of these magazines that we'll probably see later on where they actually show the prices for the consoles and the games, and a lot of times they were pretty outrageous. And if you guys didn't see the Street Fighter, let me zoom in on it. And then prepare yourself for Mortal Monday, September 13th, 1993. Who could forget? RoboCop versus the Terminator got its Genesis preview. Remember this game being really gory on the Genesis, and then RoboCop 3 on the SNES, or rather, RoboCop versus Terminator on the SNES being the censored one. Had better graphics though, I remember that much. Sonic Pinball, noteworthy game here. Arrow the Acrobat gets his 2-page spread from Sunsoft. Sega CD Pro review of AH3 Thunderstrike. It reviewed actually pretty good. The Adventures of Plock. To be continued at a retailer near you. This is a pro review of The Amazing Spider-Man and the Kingpin for Sega CD. I actually had this game. The Quick Shot. Different controller configurations here to purchase. Stellar Fire for the Sega CD and their preview. Man meets machine, machine meets man. Wonder what that could be for. It's actually for Terminator. Versus RoboCop. You can mail in your copy of Video Game Secrets, Tips, Tactics, and Passwords. The award-winning VHS also available for rent at Blockbuster Video. Call to order now. $9.95. Get your parents' permission before you call. Coming in November. Different posters and move lists. Or is this kind of like a... Yeah, it's like a strategy guide move list for Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. You can call to order that too. A really nice, really nice 2-page advertisement spread for X-Men, Spider-Man and the X-Men for Super Nintendo and for Genesis, and also Game Boy from LJN. We have Terminator 2 Judgment Day, Super Nintendo preview, and even looking at the screenshots when I was younger, I knew this game was going to be trash, and so it was when it released. Sim Ant, another curious game for the Super Nintendo. Chuck Rock, which is a game unfortunately I had the unpleasure of playing. This is Chuck Rock 2, son of Chuck Rock. Which never really got into that series. I was more into Caveman Ninja and Toki. There were its fans. Fans were there. Legend. This is for Super Nintendo. A lot of the Super Nintendo stuff got 5.0 in graphics. Nintendo had the power back then. Not sure what they're doing now. Battle cars. That reviewed pretty well too. The closest thing to real football without grass stains. It was for the Turbo Duo CD John Madden. Looks really interesting. I do want to play that game. By Hudson Soft. And here we have some quick snippet reviews because not everything fit in the magazine, so they just cut these reviews basically in quarters and put them on one page. And this would happen from time to time. Eat, sleep, bust a few heads. World Heroes, the 16 meg arcade action game. The fighting game that was only ever thought to be available on the Neo Geo. Boy, were they wrong. When these games came out and they were released on Super Nintendo, I would remember hearing people who spent $200-$300 on a cart just to play this game. Kind of sour over the fact that people who owned a lesser console, in their opinion, like the Super Nintendo, only paid $40-$50 for the game. And here's the preview of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters for the Super Nintendo. And I played this game to death. And when I saw this, I freaked out. A fighting game with Ninja Turtles? I couldn't believe it. But it was really cool to be alive back then. Rolling Thunder 3 advertisement. ActRaiser 2, another amazing Super Nintendo RPG. It's touted to be like one of the first Super Nintendo RPGs, or I should say, not one of the first Super Nintendo RPGs, but it's touted as one of the very best action RPG series back in the day. Cliffhanger got his own game. Captain America and the Avengers eventually came out for the Super Nintendo when Genesis pretty much had a stranglehold on that arcade classic. It's good to see that it got freed from jail, from Genesis jail. Techno Super Bowl, an iconic football game of many years past. Star Trek The Next Generation for NES. NES games were still coming out at this time. And then we have an advertisement here for Alien vs. Predator on the Super Nintendo. This one really bummed me out because I thought it was going to be like the arcade. I remember playing the arcade and coming home, and when I saw that this game was coming to the Super Nintendo, I made plans to make sure I could afford it. And was very disappointed after I played it because it really wasn't like the arcade at all. Mario is Missing is another one of those educational Mario games that we got for Super Nintendo. And it was very regrettable when I rented it. I spent my weekend playing it. Another gross advertisement here. When confronted with danger, possums will often play dead. But this one goes ballistic. Rocket Knight Adventures for the Sega Genesis. The best Genesis has to offer, in my opinion. This game is fantastic. Sparkster for the Super Nintendo is really good as well. A pro review for Samurai Showdown, newly released for the Neo Geo. Got a 5.0 all the way across. Arcade perfect conversion. You see the key commands here. And they have a survival guide for the game. Shows you how to pull off different combos, different moves. And each character kind of has a slice going across. Pretty cool. You can afford a Jaguar back then. I mean, you were eating really good. I'm sorry, not a Jaguar. If you could afford a Neo Geo back then, you were eating really good. You were having filet mignon and baked carrots. Meanwhile, the rest of us were stuck with fast food, like Jim Power. Overseas Prospects also was a section where they talked about games that were being imported from Japan. Jim Dandy got himself a import here. And Splatterhouse, of course. Who can forget? Namco's horror classic. Players are armed and wireless. Approach with extreme caution. The first editions of those wireless controllers were garbage. Second edition, this next go round, were somewhat better. I mean, these did work within range. And that's not accurate. It's more like 5 to 10 feet. Which is still good. But not 25 feet. No way. The sports page, another section here where they talked about sports games and different types of sports were showcased. Wrestling was also part of the sports page. Boxing as well. Boxing Legends was one of those fighting games, or boxing games I should say, that I really enjoyed playing. It was really due to the realism. at the time. Riddick Bowe bruises to victory. In Riddick Bowe boxing. And they would compare them. Boxing legends for the SNES to the Genesis. SNES seems to have had better sound, even though some people swore that the Genesis sound chip was superior. But the pros didn't think so. Madden 94 preview. Madden takes the Genesis and the SNES to the Super Bowl. Holyfield boxing for the Game Gear. I liked Holyfield boxing for the Sega Genesis. That was one of my favorite boxing games back then, including the other boxing game here that we had, the Boxing Legends of the Ring. Football Fury, easy for rookies. Didn't really review well. Top Gear 2. Some of the racing games. Top Gear was among the top back then of games that were sought after. Sega Sports, of course, had its own insiders column. This was before forums and blogs. Beautiful advertisement here for the Turbo Duo and its games. They always had really, really colorful and inspiring artwork. DuckTales 2 was reviewed here for the Game Boy. And here are the Game Boy reviews in quarters, sectioned off, and all in one page. WWF 4, King of the Ring. Remember having that one. Ring Rage was another wrestling game that was pretty cool for the Game Boy. They reviewed okay. Game Boy was really about fun factor. And here's the Cool Spot. A lot of you may or may not remember Cool Spot, but I do. 7-Up's mascot made into a game. Game Gear Pro View, or Pro Review, I should say, of James Bond, The Duel. And here's some Game Gear games. WWF WrestleMania Steel Cage Challenge. Journey from Darkness, Strider Returns. Also got reviewed here. Overall, Game Gear was either hit or miss, and a lot of them were misses. He said he'd be back. He's back. With more levels, more enemies, more weapons, more control. The Terminator. Terminator for the Sega CD. This was my only Sega CD game at launch. And it was a game I played thoroughly. Rippin' soundtrack. Soundtrack was GOAT. some Lynx Pro reviews, Atari Lynx games. I always thought the Atari Lynx graphics were kind of weird. Pack Attack for Super Nintendo. It's like a puzzler. We got one of those inserts again. GamePro Lab Reports. This is where this they got rid of this section fairly early on, but this one pretty much talked about different controllers, and people were reviewing them and the issues that they may have had. And just kind of overview on the controllers or setups. Like for instance, there's the game stackers, which was like a stacker setup, like a little shelf piece for your Super Nintendo games. Genesis Pro controller pad, which had the analog stick. Another advertisement here for Haunting. Very cheaply made. Wasn't that great. I guess they were just like, well, let's just put you in this weird costume. Take a picture of you outside. Low effort advertisement. Here's another. Rock and Roll Racing is a favorite among people. It was a pretty cool game. A kart combat type game. Short pro shots were they previewed some games, let you know which ones were available. Pit Fighter 2 for Genesis. Royal Rumble for Genesis. EA Sports Soccer. Incredible Hulk. The favorite. Sega CD Microcosm. NBA Showdown. I had NBA Showdown for the Super Nintendo. Pole Position. And Lester the Unlikely. The game that Angry Video Game Nerd reviewed. Battle Cars. It's a Namco advertisement for Battle Cars using Mode 7. I don't remember that one. Rock and Roll Racing just overshadowed it probably. Here we have just a couple Game Gear, Game Boy games that talking about Kirby's Pinball Land. John Madden a Duo CD. Pretty interesting to see it again. I really do want to give it a try. And here's an average for the Clay Fighter, but check this out. He's crushed Chun-Li and Blanca. That's pretty cool. A little poke at the competition there. It was a fun time. No one got their feelings hurt. Late breaking news. Mutant League Hockey comes to Sega Genesis. Early 1994. Here's another beautiful advertisement. This one for Hook for the Sega Genesis. Captain America and the Avengers. There was a poster here, but we removed it. And then SWAT Pro, which was the part of GamePro that showcased the different cheats in games. They would give you passwords for Game Shark, button combinations for cheats. Time Gal had its passwords. Bomberman 93 for the Duo had its own different passwords to skip levels. And here are some of the prices. Game Discount Warehouse, $59, I should say, for Super Nintendo games. Sega Genesis games were $49. Sega CD games were $39. Game Gear games were $39, and Game Boy games were $29. And they're strangely, I mean, some of these were different prices. But Final Fight for the Sega CD was $42 at the time. Joe Montana Football was $49 for the Sega CD. Street Fighter, because they charged $59 for Championship Edition. That was an expensive Super Nintendo game. Mecha Robot Golf. Game Busters. Here where they showcased the game and talked about different aspects of a game, and this one is showcasing X-Men. And here's another price list. The Sega CD System 2, $229. Hasn't changed price. Genesis System was $114 back in the day. And then the price list, as you can see, games were not cheap. I remember it as being just another game, but my parents remember it as Overtime. However, the Neo Geo Gold system was $569, which is actually cheaper than it is right now. And the games were about $200. Wish I would have bought a Neo Geo back in the day. Turbo Duo was $289. And the Jaguar being $200 at launch would have fit in nicely if the games were there for it, but unfortunately it fell flat, and people lost out. Nice big spread here for Jurassic Park as we finish the magazine. Jurassic Park with multiple games for multiple systems. Life Found a Way. And then the Pro News section at the end. Talks about AT&T acquiring the Sierra network. Mortal Barcode. Nintendo bundles Mario All-Stars with the SNES. Hey, Phil Spencer. Get a load of that. winners never quit. Good news, bad news department. From video screen to movie screen. Talking about how games like Street Fighter 2 were getting movie translations. The top 10 video game rentals at Blockbuster. Okay, check what that is. For the Nintendo, the NES, number 1 at Blockbuster in 1993 was Jurassic Park. Followed by number 2, Kirby's Adventure. Mario is Missing comes in at number 3. And Tecmo NBA Basketball at number 4. Super Bowl, Tecmo Super Bowl, number 5. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, all the way at number 8. But it made the list, though. It was in among the top 10. And Tiny Toon Adventures, that's surprising that it would be at the bottom. For the Super Nintendo, hey, there's no doubt Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and it would be like this and stay like this for many years. Super Slam Dunk, Magic Johnson, the basketball game featuring Magic Johnson. WWF Royal Rumble was number 3. Battletoads in Battlemaniacs. Mario is Missing is number 5. I don't believe that. Street Fighter 2, Mario All-Stars at number 7, Final Fight 2, Star Fox, and Nigel Mansell's World Championship Racing to round off the 10. Sega Genesis had Jurassic Park, which was an awesome game. X-Men was number 2, cool spot, took the 3rd spot. Mutant League Football was very fun. We see Streets of Rage 2 and Road Rash 2. Road Rash 2, my favorites too. Sega CDs, rentals, Echo the Dolphin was number 1. Batman Returns number 2 because it was just that damn hard. Final Fight 3. Final Fight is number 3. Night Trap number 4. I remember a lot of adults renting that game. Time Gal, Sewer Shark, my favorite. And then we have the ads again here for mail-in games. Receive up to $40 when you sell your own games. Funko Land. I don't remember there actually being a physical Funko store anywhere near where I used to live, but we had the mail order stuff. Tips and Tricks, 1-900-806. Tips and Tricks. Your fully loaded Game Boy is here. And yes, you can take it everywhere. What the heck? Well, almost everywhere. Don't go scuba diving. Handy gear for the Game Gear. That's pretty cool. That shell looks pretty cool though on the Game Gear. And then to close off, an advertisement for the Game Boy version of Raging Fighter. That is it for this edition of Post the Quest. Stay tuned for more videos. We'll be playing more of Final Fantasy VII, the Sephiroth edition, coming soon. We'll get your part 4 will be coming, and I will be posting a video or making a live. Been having a lot of fun making those live streams, so we're going to do a lot more. But we'll see you next time. And of course, more wrestling games and other weird hack games. Anything I can get my hands on, I'll show it to you. Anything noteworthy, I will be posting a video or making a live. Been having a lot of fun making those live streams, so we're going to do a lot more. But we'll see you next time.